to the 19th episode of Concussion Chats. My name is Taya. Concussion Chats is a podcast hosted by the McGill Students for the Concussion Legacy Foundation with the help of Nick from Concussion Talk podcast. We're dedicated to providing strength and hope to those suffering from concussions through sharing experiences. Today, I have a recording of our guest speaker, Paige. Bella is the owner of Post-Concussion Inc., a website to help brain injury survivors and their families. After sustaining over 10 concussions and experiencing post-concussion syndrome for nearly 9 years, she realized that she could help others. And can't wait to share what she learns with everyone. Though Bella still struggles with symptoms, she is now living happily with PCS and believes you can too.
All right, Bella. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, for sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Bella. She kind of gave a little bit of lowdown. So I started Post-Concussion Inc. this fall, kind of after the whole COVID started and I had nothing else to do. And I needed something to do and I wanted to help. I am also a host of the Post-Concussion podcast, which I will talk about a little bit later. So my story is really long. It actually started about 15 years ago, but that was when I had one head injury. And what had happened was I was snowboarding with my friends. I was 8 years old and we were racing and I decided to sit in front of a jump. Now, when you think about that, that's a terrible idea. But when you're 8 years old, it seems like a great meeting spot. So I met and sat in front of the jump because I had won. So I was super excited. And then a 20-year-old flew over that jump and landed on top of me. And we tumbled halfway down the hill and I had did not realize the extent of my head injury. My knee really hurt. So I limped back to the chalet. I don't think I snowboarded the rest of the day. And then I happened to be a dancer at the time. So I went to dance that night and my dance teacher called my mom saying, "There's something off with Bella. You should probably come get her." And that's when we clued in that I probably had a head injury from the crash. And then I had a whole bunch of other head injuries. As Emily said, it was from, I've had over 10. A lot of them were from show jumping. So one of them, I was riding my pony down the rail and she tripped and I went head first into the dirt and she rolled over top of me. But I got on that day right after. I brushed the dirt off me, made sure she was okay, and then got on and rode for another hour. Did not clue in that I have a head injury. And then I had headaches all summer, so for about 2 months. And then I had gotten really competitive into riding horses. So at that time, I had only been riding competitively, but in my local area, which is really small. I'm from a small town. But then I decided in my first year of high school, I moved away from home. So I was competing lots. And that was like my life. I had finally reached the dream. All I was doing was riding horses every day. Nothing else mattered. And I did that for about 2 years, but I had a few falls in there. And a couple of the times when I fell, I took, I think, a week off the one time, didn't train all week, but then showed on the weekend. And that was obviously a bad idea. And then I had moved away from home again. I was living in Florida, actually, and I was 15, and the headaches had started. And I remember taking Tylenol, Advil, etc., and pretty much anything. And I didn't really think much about it, that like this wasn't from being tired. This was from the fact that I have a head injury and there's something wrong here. You should not have a headache every day, even if you are up from 5 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night. It's not normal. But I was just kind of explaining it as exhaustion. Like I was busy, I was riding multiple horses a day. I didn't think much about it. And after the season ended in Florida, I had moved back home and I was really kind of depressed because the headaches, but I didn't tell anyone what was going on because I had to move back home to finish school up. And then I decided, well, it's all good. I'm just going to go show again. So I showed for a whole nother season with the headaches. Didn't tell anyone. I would mention that I had a headache once in a while. I wasn't sleeping. I was doing yoga at 4 a.m. because I was like wide awake and I couldn't figure out what to do. So I tried exercising and that did not work. So then eventually it kind of caught up with me. So at the end of the season, it was time to move home. And 2 weeks before that, I had gotten off my horse and my best friend caught me because I fainted. And that was because the amount of pressure in my head. I was so dizzy when I finished my round. And then when I had moved home is when the real crash happened. All of a sudden, the adrenaline rush from the horse shows had stopped. The excitement of the daily training, all of that had slowed down. So then all of a sudden I was home for high school and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a lot of pain. The lights are too bright. I can't get out of bed. And I was told to drop out of school at that time by doctors. They're like, maybe you should just take a break and try again later, which was huge. I was like panicked because I'm a big school person. I was like, no, I'm fine. And I came up with a system where I would go to school for one class one day. So Monday I'd go to my first class, Tuesday I'd go to my second class, Wednesday I'd go to my third class. And that's how I did that grade 11 of high school. I went one day for one class because that's all I could handle and I didn't want to drop out. But when all that happened, my mental health like tanked, like through the roof, like, or through the ground. I guess it's the opposite way. But it tanked majorly because I couldn't do anything. All my friends were out and I would go out with them and I would smile through it, but I'd be in so much pain and they had no idea what was going on. All my friends were like, oh, I knew you had concussions, but I didn't realize how bad you were suffering. And I didn't realize how bad I was suffering either because I wasn't talking about it. I kept it really secret. It was all on the inside. And it really, like, my mental health was struggling. I was doing a ton of therapies. My parents were sending me to doctors. I was on pain meds. I got really bad side effects from those pain meds. And I just kept going. And what had happened was it was just way too much. And then after my second year of high school, I decided, or I guess third, I decided that I was going to just stop taking the pain meds because I had one pain med made me lose 20 pounds in about 3 months. 25 pounds. So I looked really small. I was afraid. I didn't want to go outside. I wore sweatpants everywhere because if people saw me, they'd make comments because I was so tiny. They'd be like, oh, I wish I could be skinny like you. And I was so little and I was so upset about it. None of my clothes fit that I didn't leave the house. So I was like, screw this, no meds, no nothing. And I had to deal with a nutritionist for 2 years after that to learn how to eat again. So that was quite a process. And if you have questions about that, feel free to ask. And then after that, I decided I was better. So because I was managing to go to school more, I was like, I'm doing great, except for the fact that I had a headache every single day still. But I was like, I'm doing great. I'm going to move away for university and I'm going to show again. So that's what I did. I moved across the country with my horse. And I was like, I'm ready. This is what I'm going to do. Go to school, ride. And it's going to be perfect. And I lasted about 4 months. And in those 4 months, the headache started getting worse from university being a huge step for most people. And then because I hadn't been a full-time student for the last 2 years in high school, and then the big step of university, and then all of a sudden riding competitively and jumping really large. So when you land off of a jump, I would feel the impact in my head every single time, especially as the jumps got bigger. So I actually ended up blacking out completely. I was 11 o'clock at night and I remember all of a sudden everything disappeared and I lived in an apartment alone. So I didn't know what to do. I couldn't call 911. I couldn't exit my apartment because I couldn't see. And I remember just laying there terrified. And it was about 3-4 hours later and I called my mom in a different time zone, like freaking out that there's something wrong because I couldn't see. And then she like calmed me down. And then a few weeks later, I was like, I think it's time for me to move home because dealing with all of this alone is not something I'm ready to do. Like I needed my family, needed my parents to come to the emerge with me. And I just needed that extra support that my family could provide. So I moved back home. And then the way I did university was really helpful. So I used the accessibility system the best I could because I had memory issues, sound issues, so I needed that extra time in tests to actually walk away from the test and sit for 5 minutes and not look at anything. The memory, I had a little sheet that I could use. That was amazing because it was just a word sheet. It would just have words from the textbook, random words. And then the professor would approve it. But those words would be enough of a reminder of what I studied because at that time in university, I could barely read. So trying to remember what I had read was even more of a challenge, let alone reading everything. So that really helped me. I also didn't go to class much. Well, now that's kind of how it is with COVID, but I had already started that. Everything was posted online for most professors. So I just did it from home because that person tapping that pencil in the classroom would make me explode, and I'd just get up and leave the class. I was like, I can't do this. Can't do the sensitivity. So university was long, but I finished, and then I decided to ride again because I'm really competitive and that's my personality. So I moved away from home again because there's nothing here. And I went from not riding to riding 6 to 8 horses a day, and I lasted a month. And that was the worst decision that I made. I shouldn't have gone from 0 to 100. I should have progressed it slowly to see if it was going to work. But I remember by the end of that month, I was sitting over a bucket wanting to puke. So then I just needed to do something with my life. So I spent the next year trying to figure out, was there other sports that I like that I could do that are safe, that don't set off the triggers, that don't make my headaches worse. And I found a few things that I really like, but nothing that gave me the same feeling. So then I worked for a year, and then COVID hit, and I was like, well, maybe I could help people. So I decided I'm going to start a blog because I like to write, and I'm going to keep them short because when I had my head injuries started, I couldn't read. So let's keep them simple. And then after that, I decided that I should start a podcast because my brother was like, you love podcasts, you should listen to podcasts. So that's how everything started. There's a lot more in there. My mental health was one of the biggest things I like to talk about because it's invisible what you're going through, and we don't talk about it. We don't tell anyone that we're struggling. We just kind of keep it to ourselves a lot of the time. And I have a big family. I was around my family members every day. And actually, the moment that I did end up in a hospital because I had overdosed, I ended up being surrounded by my family, who was the most upset in the world. And then they kind of babysat me for a few months when I went through mandatory therapy. And I realized that I should have told them because they were the people that were going to help me through it. And I should have reached out sooner before the point of me ending up in a hospital bed. And another thing I like to mention is therapy saved my life. I will say that a million times because the depression and the anxiety of the flooding thoughts that would come in, like, is it this worth it? Why are you dealing with this much pain? What are you doing with your life? It was just so much that I didn't know how to turn the thoughts off, and they would just kind of drown me out. I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't control what I was doing. So therapy gave me the tools to really calm those down. So that was really useful for me. And yeah, so that's my story. I've done pretty much every therapy you can think about out there, from acupuncture to HBOT to I've done float therapy. I've done all of the diet stuff. I've done pretty much everything: Nuka Chiro, regular Chiro, massage, the whole list, from laser therapy as well, allergy testing, pretty much everything in the book. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And that's me.
Today I have Emily, who is also part of McGill Students for Concussion Legacy Foundation, Nick from Concussion Talk podcast, and his co-host Aaron, who is also the coordinator for the Newfoundland and Labrador Brain Injury Association, joining me today. So Bella's talk was really good, and I think there was just a lot of things that she said that were relatable to a lot of people. We had a really good group discussion afterwards.
Yeah, it seemed like it'd be a good group discussion because I noticed one thing I'll knock over my microphone on a minute, but I noticed is that she just kind of mentioned in passing that that floating, she tried all these therapies and she tried floating, but she just mentioned it as one of the therapies. But Jordan was saying, "Oh, that was the best thing ever," and so it shows how different people respond differently to different treatments.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's true actually, because Jordan was a couple weeks ago and he was like, yeah, floating was the best thing for me. And for Bella, she just kind of mentioned it in passing when she was going over all the things that she tried. Yeah, so it just really shows how different everyone is.
Yeah.
I think the thing that amazed me the most about her too was just her determination to try to get back into the sport she loves so much. And like it was oftentimes misguided in a way, and she knew that, she accepted that, but it was just like, oh my gosh, why did you put yourself through that again? I almost felt like screaming at her. I was like, no.
Yeah, it's because she
accepted
accepted.
so much.
Yeah.
I
like
definitely
every couple years
get where she's coming from, like, because I mean, I played through lots of concussions in rugby and like just like didn't tell people and stuff like that. And I mean, same with hockey, and like you just kind of like do it because like you don't want to miss like your sport, and like you don't want to miss out. And I mean, also when like you're young, like high school me like didn't think about my brain in the future. Like what does that matter? Like I just want to play. I just want like field time, you know? So I definitely relate to her on the like just repeatedly going back from like you totally shouldn't. I feel like M could too.
And you were
I think every couple years I just try and go back.
I remember even in like
shouldn't.
I remember even in like second year, I think it was, when you wanted to play soccer. Like
I
just
did play.
Did you?
Oh yeah, like 100% played.
Yeah.
But then I got a concussion sledding, so I stopped.
Yeah.
Then what, sledding?
Yeah. It happened. I just got whiplash. Pretty bad.
I think it's like people think they're like, oh, well, I know all this information now. I'll be safer and like I'll be good. I can go back. I understand now. Then you get back in the game and you're like, the competition is here. And like that same energy that you're like, I need to push myself harder. I need to get into like that play that might be.
Oh, I need to be careful. Yeah. Like, no, like you're competitive again. Like you're back in it. Yeah. No, that's. Really
and there's like no changing that core personality where you're just like, this is part of who I am, and it's great, but it's not great when you get hurt repeatedly.
Yeah, no, that's super true. Like I'm so competitive. Like I compete over anything, like anything. And I think that's something that like you can't like take out of yourself super easily. And
I think this one thing is that like people say always like, oh, you know, in high school they're too young, you don't think about like you're like you're saying like your brain, you're that young, but it's just competitiveness. And also couldn't it be just not because they're young and they don't know as much about brain, not that older people know a lot, not that older people know a ton either, but just that's also just the fact that you're at that age, especially you're very competitive about getting ahead and stuff, and so it's not only. I'll say ignorance is a nice way to say ignorance, but you know, not knowing.
I'd say it's just the impulse control. Yeah. Like when you're a teenager, it's well known that you're going to be higher risk and have a lot more impulses to do things without fully thinking it through. And then you throw a couple concussions on top of that, you're going to have a lot more of those impulse difficulties.
And you don't know about what the concussion is, like what the whole like brain thing is, like what the effects could be, and then the rest are. And you just kind of like, why not do it? But
then
it's not so much a question like, why did you do it? It's why didn't you do it? It's more the seems to me.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, like I like even before like I started doing the support group, I still didn't like understand or know very much about concussions. Like even though like I played sports like my whole life and stuff, and I mean concussions aren't something that everyone knows about, and then it's just in general like across the board like no one knows much about concussions, and it's also hard, like I mean if you're a kid and like no adults are telling you like no you cannot do this because your head's so messed up, because they also don't know like the seriousness of it all, then like obviously a teenager's not gonna just take themselves out of the sport. Like
especially not a sport they love, like
right,
that's the problem. Like she mentioned she went out, like moved away from home for this too, like to do something you're that passionate about.
That's really really true. Like she clearly was like really into it and in love with it, and like you can't just give up on something that easily. Like it's really really hard, and it's not you're not gonna kind of like go down without a fight sort of thing. And
saying, well, I kind of laughed, and there's nothing to do with like concussions, but what I kind of laughed at is what she was saying, like, oh, moved away, I moved on to, I was in Florida for this year. I was like, okay, well, I don't know where you live anyway, where your home is. So just saying Florida could mean that you're at home. Like, I have no idea.
Yeah, no. Something someone brought up in like the discussion afterwards. A couple of people asked about like what therapy helped her the most. And she said like mental health wise, like mindfulness, like learning to like calm down her brain when like thoughts started racing and stuff. And then I guess like two things that were really helpful for her were like picking an item in the room and like describing it in her head, because then like she'd be distracted, or like words, like think of a word, like for example, like think, spell it out, imagine it, spell it like backwards and forwards, and like think about all the letters and stuff. That was something I thought was cool, because I don't know, like I definitely, my brain just like goes, and it's a good little mindfulness technique.
So did she mention anything about like different, she had a bunch of concussions, but did she mention any one specific concussion that afterwards she had trouble thinking or speaking or walking, or like were there different repercussions for everyone, like different noticeable effects, symptoms of everyone?
I don't know exactly which one. I feel like the really significant one would probably be like when like she had to like relearn how to eat and stuff. Like I feel like that one in high school was probably pretty significant.
She mentioned the one where she lost her vision, wasn't it? She blacked out. She couldn't see anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like first year of university, like 4 months in, and then like all of a sudden she just like couldn't see, and like yeah, so, and then she moved back home because that was like obviously super scary. Like I can't even, like when she was talking about that, I was imagining that, and like that's terrifying, like being all alone, like your family's not near you, and like you can't even call anyone because you literally can't see. Yeah, that'd be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Another therapy that she said was like her like number one. She said like craniosacral massages were her favorite thing to get done, because it would help remove her headaches. And I was thinking about that person, Emily, that that does like craniosacral massages, and I was like, man, like maybe I should get one of those. Maybe that would make my life so much better. But yeah, and then she was also talking about diet too. Like figuring out what like your triggers are. She said like she still eats gluten because like she loves bread and stuff, but sugar is one of like her main triggers, so she avoids sugar, and like keeping a food journal, and like every once in a while like she'll redo that process, and also hormone therapy was really helpful for her, because like it would just like flow a bunch. But yeah, I don't know. She had a lot of good like tips and like things that she learned along the way that she shared. And something else someone brought up was on her website, she has a really good like description for like what PCS is, and the person said like they bookmarked it, like they're gonna save it and they're gonna like use that to explain PCS to people now. So that was pretty cool too.
I have no
So
idea
her,
sorry, I had nothing important to say.
I was just gonna ask about her blog there. So she just started that during quarantine, like within the last year?
Yeah. So she started it in the fall, I think was when she said. And she seems like she really like likes it and like is like really passionate about it, which is super cool. I checked it out like briefly while like towards like the end of the meeting, and it looks like it could be really helpful for sure. And there's some tips and stuff, and yeah. What were you saying, Nick?
I was gonna say that I have no idea about craniosacral massages. Like, what does that entail?
Emily, you've gotten it done before, right? You can explain.
Yeah, craniosacral massage is just focused on like the where your neck meets your skull. Yeah, and the muscles in there that might be causing some like tension sort of headaches, but it's like very, very focused on that one area. I know there was a guy that came into the support group along, like when we were still in person, who was having like a lot of pain if he touched the top of his head. And I've heard of people who like showering hurts because the water hitting the top of their head, and usually like craniosacral is like really, really helpful for that sort of stuff. And I know the guy from the group responded pretty well to it. I've had it done once, and it was really nice, and I could use it again. I just, I'm on the chiropractic neurology route right now, and so trying to keep it to one treatment at a time.
Right. Yeah. No, I have my brain, like, they took out my bone flap. But again, there's like that's tender, obviously. I've written it for all these years. It's still a bit. So I wonder if the kind of cycle being you get to that. It doesn't hurt me constantly at all. It just hurts me when I think about it, when I really poke it or pull a hair a certain way or whatever. But
yeah, wow,
that's more skin thing, I guess. But
yeah, I don't know. I'd never even thought about it. Like, I just always kind of thought that it hurt to touch the top of your head. I didn't really think of that as an issue.
Well, if you don't,
but it does.
But that's just like people have had, like, you know, so as a epidural hematoma, like, or if you're mixed thing. But if you have like a brain bleed, if they get open up your skull, then that could be an issue. But if they don't open up your skull, then I don't think it will be an issue.
Yeah, okay.
You bring up an interesting point, though, Emily. Like,
the top of my head.
Yeah, the things you think are normal.
Man, there's so many things I thought were normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crap. It's crazy.
And then, like, when you realize, like, someone else says it, and you're like, oh. Like,
yeah, I mean, I was friends with Emily for like 2 years before like I really like registered like the thing she was talking about like vision and stuff, and I was like, oh wait, like seeing like this isn't normal, or you know, like constantly feeling my head's gonna blow up, like that's not normal either. Like I thought that was just like how everyone felt, you know. No, it's really crazy, like once you start talking to people, to be like, wow, it's not normal. Okay.
Yeah.
I should feel like that.
I do think like one thing can happen though when that happens is like a couple different reactions that people have. And I've had different reactions, and one of those reactions is like too hyper focused on that one thing, even though you've probably been living with it somewhat functionally for maybe up to several years now. I know that's my case. That's why I'm not that stressed about top of my head hurting. I've gotten to this point where I'm like, okay, well, I've been living with it for this long. I don't need to freak out. If at some point I have the means and opportunity to do craniosacral, I'm going to make that happen for me. But that's kind of like what I was talking about last week. Like, it's okay to accept some of the issues if you're focused on, you know, one thing. But I feel like sometimes when we notice things that aren't normal,
then
easy to have to fixate. So.
No, yeah, it's kind of the judgment of if it's interfering with your daily life and functioning, then go work on it. But if you're managing and you're still getting through the day, fine. Just put it off until you can actually put all your focus into trying to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's kind of the most important thing. Like, is it currently affecting your quality of life, or can you manage it, focus on other things, and then get back to it in the future? Do you guys have any last quick things to say?
I just think it's cool that.
What, Emily?
I think it's cool. I said I think it's just cool that she I just lost my train of thought. That she's working to try and help people. Like, I relate a lot to that. Like, as far as concussions.
Yeah.
Obviously, I relate a lot to that. But yeah, so I think that's really cool that she's doing that, and I think that's, you know, again, if anyone wants to be a speaker in our group, and that's like a good way to help people, and that feels good.
Oh, also Nick, actually, she has a podcast. You guys should interview her. It's a post-concussion podcast or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, thanks to Nick for helping us do the podcast. Thanks, Emily and Aaron, for joining. And thank you to Bella for joining our support group and speaking with the group. We'll have a new podcast posted Monday morning. Our upcoming podcasts can be found on concussiontalk.com, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can find more information about our group on concussionmtl.com. Our peer-to-peer support group is free and open to everyone. We hold 4 weekly meetings on Zoom, and one is a French meeting, and we'll have the links in the description. Thanks. HeadCheck Health bridges gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Trek Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.